Hej, jag heter Irene Odmark Hall. Jag är Skandinaviens enda EFT International Master Trainer och jag har satt ihop den här programserien för människor som dig med inspiration och kunskap som gör livet lite lättare.
So, welcome to today's episode of EFT Masterclass on stress, sleep and self-compassion. And we all need to sleep. And while we sleep, our whole system, our whole mind, body, everything kind of renews itself, restores itself. I mean, it's like a kind of healing. And in order to sleep well, we do need to feel safe, don't we? In Swedish, we use the word trygg. And now that's an interesting question, I think. Does the same hold true for emotional healing and healing from old wounds and traumas? So the person to tell us more about that is Dr. Craig Weiner, who's here with us today. So really welcome, Craig.
Oh, thank you so much. It's such an honor to be here.
Yeah, it is. It's great to have you here. And you worked in the healthcare profession for about 30 years. And now you're and this is a tricky long word to say, you're an EFT International Master Trainer of Trainers.
I am.
Yeah, you got it. And also with your wife, Elena, you're running the EFT Tapping Training Institute. And I think you do a really great job of sort of bringing solid and good quality and safe tapping to the world. So where do we start? Sometimes
wherever you want to start.
Well, I'd like to start with saying that somehow on the surface, EFT seems so simple. I mean, you bring the problem to mind, you state the problem, and then you balance it with something that, some kind of self-acceptance on the side of your hand, and then you start to tap. But then things start
very, very simple.
Things start to happen. So is it always true that you carry on in the way you started in the beginning, that you know in advance what you're going to tap on and the emotions and the issues and things that are going to come up?
Yeah, if only it were that simple. Yeah. So I do like exactly what you're saying. There's this balance. On one hand, the beauty of EFT is its simplicity, right? So that there are ways that EFT, as opposed to many other type of therapeutic interventions, can be self-applied, which is so important and so self-empowering, because not everybody has access to a practitioner and a therapist all the time. And there are certainly times in their life when they don't have access to somebody, and that they can self-apply this tapping technique, which is brilliant and wonderful. And I love that about it. The thing that I would like to say is, as a practitioner for many years, though, the reason people come in often isn't where we end up going. It's where we start. So in other words, I was doing an interview. I do interviews like you do, and I love them. And we were doing one for the Tapping Out of Trauma Cost with Dr. Peta Stapleton, right? And she's a researcher, and we were just talking about addictions. So people that come in, whether it's a substance or a behavior or something they're addicted to. And what we understand is, for example, you might be tapping on, even though I'm really craving this chocolate or coffee or whatever it is. What's underneath that, where we start with, I feel anxious, even though I feel anxious because I can't get my cup of coffee right now and I want it, or whatever it is. Right? That what's underneath that is the need to self-soothe.
So explain that, self-soothing.
Yeah, right. So in other words, there's some underlying worry, anxiousness, fear, nervousness, and that I use something, either an activity, a behavior, a substance, food, to help me to soothe myself, to be able to feel calmer, to be able to feel less anxious. So while the problem may end up being that somebody begins with is wanting to cut back their coffee or whatever it is, which is especially important with regard to sleep, right? Which we'll talk about. Where we end up going is underlying that anxiousness is what's causing them to be anxious.
Yeah.
Probably more than just not having a cup of coffee right now. So where we begin with is the anxiousness over trying to cut back on my caffeine, But underneath that is, what is happening in my life that's making me feel this stress and anxiety and worry and fear, etc. So what you said is where we begin often kind of circles down to deeper underlying things that are making us feel not at peace, not relaxed. And so where we begin is rarely where we end. And that's just part of the process of the peeling of the onion and going deeper to find the root cause. So yes, that's true.
And strangely enough, when you actually got to that place, you realize that, oh, this is the right path. This is where it actually originates. But it is difficult to sort of imagine it in advance. So what would you say about the origins of I mean, why do we have all these worries, anxieties, stresses? Is there, what a question. Is there,
I know, because it's as if there's a single answer, right? And of course we all know that there isn't.
yeah.
But there are some themes. So I would say that when we look to the persistent source of something feeling not okay in our life, the persistent, we want to say, I know better. I shouldn't be scared. I shouldn't be worried. I shouldn't be, why do I feel that way? There's no reason for, well, there's always a reason. But often it's below the level of our consciousness. So our conscious mind doesn't do a good job at overriding emotion-based fears who were born in adversity, who were born in trauma, who were born in the bad things, because our nervous system then gets rewired based on bad things, based on trauma. And it resets our nervous system. So that despite me saying, oh, I shouldn't be worried about that, I shouldn't be scared about that, my survival-based system that's based in the emotional part of our brain, that's based on traumatic experiences, is far more powerful and enduring because it's trying to help us survive. So it's way more powerful than the, oh, I shouldn't feel that way voice. Now, where those, I was just going to finish one thought and then I'll get back. So no one person has had the same life experiences, but we all have them. And what they do is they alter our nervous system and perception, what Stephen Porges calls our neuroception, how our bodies perceive what feels safe and what doesn't feel safe, which of course is different for everybody else. And so we're going to talk a lot about safety, because how I feel and how safe or not I feel will determine my reactions to circumstances, will determine the relationships I choose in life, the career I choose, the clothes I wear, the what I do and don't do, where I go and where I don't go. So ultimately, the feeling of an internal sense of safety and the ability to self-regulate ourselves and feel safe is a game changer, and we have to understand that a lot more.
And when you say to feel safe, it so often has to do with actually feeling loved or belonging to a group. Or are you thinking of any other sort of safety? As you...
Yeah. So there's, so actually I brought one of my favorite books. So, Dr. Bessel van der Kolk and The Body Keeps the Score. So I actually put out a few quotes that I thought would be helpful. And he said, he said, being able to feel safe with other people, because this goes to what you just said, is probably the single most important aspect of mental health. That safe connections are fundamental to meaningful and satisfying lives. And he talks about the term of reciprocity, of feeling heard and feeling seen by people around us, feeling that we're held in somebody else's mind and heart. So this connection to other people that feels nurturing, right? And helps us feel seen and heard and accepted is one critical aspect of safety. But another one is how we feel within ourselves based on our past experiences. So what's important to understand is that he also says, so after trauma, after we've experienced traumatic things, we can talk about what that means, but for now, we'll just stay with that. The world is experienced with a very different nervous system that has an altered perception of risk and safety. And that's what he's talking about with neuroception or faulty neuroception, which means, okay, so example to make it more real. Okay, so if I'm a child, I'm in kindergarten, young beginning of school years, and I'm asked to come to the front of the classroom and do a math problem on the board. You know? And I'm struggling to figure it out, and I'm nervous because I'm in front of the class. And the teacher looks at me and just shakes her head and says something like, "Oh, he's never going to get this," or something like that. The self-defeat, the feelings of self-defeat, and the feelings and the beliefs and the decisions that get created in that moment globalize to far more than "I'm never going to get math." Decisions get made of "I'm never going to be able to do well," or "I'm never going to be able to understand things," or "I'm not smart enough," or all kinds of various decisions that then throughout my lifetime, I see the world through, "Oh, I'm not going to try to go to university because I'm never really going to understand things well. I'm not smart enough." Or "I'm not going to find a partner that's smarter than me," or "I'm never going to," or whatever it is, right? And they get globalized, they get bigger. And I see it's the glasses that I look through the world at, that I'm never going to be smart enough to do that, so I don't try. So that feeling, and then not only that, but excuse me, is anybody that maybe sounds like a teacher, or circumstances in which I'm going to stand up in front of people don't feel safe anymore. And as soon as I start to go in front of somebody, whether it's at work or anything, my body starts to respond just like I'm going in front of the classroom to do the math problem on the board. And my body says, "Not safe, not safe, not safe." And so I start to, all of a sudden, my body reacts. My decisions start to come on. My thoughts start to get all worried. And so what we call that faulty neuroception, that it feels like I'm going into a dangerous situation, even though somebody just asked me to talk about a project that I'm involved in, which isn't really dangerous, but it feels dangerous. So that idea of safety, which is about connection with others that feels accepted and recognized and heard, but also there's that own internal dialogue based on trauma that determines whether we feel safe or not. And it doesn't matter what anybody else says, does it? "Oh, don't worry about it. You're with friends. These are people, these are supportive." And you're feeling like this, even though saying, "Oh, it's a safe place." So nobody can determine your feeling and felt sense of safety.
And it's really so strong, isn't it? Can I just add a little something? Because I used to be really, really afraid of speaking out or singing in front of others. And I remember when I decided I really wanted to do something about my voice and about learning to sing. So I went to a singing workshop, and my mind, like you say, my mind said, "It's perfectly okay." And we had to learn to sing this little, a very beautiful little melody. And it was a Czech woman. She said, "Imagine that this is a river. You step into the river, but you lose your footing. So you have to sing for help. You have to sing really loud." And I really could feel, in the end I sang. And the important thing was that I sang so loud that I was allowed to survive, because she was sort of playing this little boom, boom, for the people who died. And they would, but I managed to survive. But the interesting thing was that after I'd done that, I was sort of lying on the ground for like a quarter of an hour, just shaking and sweating. And I would never have imagined that it would be so deep into my body, because my mind told me that, "Don't worry, it'll be okay." So it is true.
You know, we say in the trauma course that trauma enters through the body and exits through. So it comes in as a felt sense experience, not just a thought. It impacts our energy system, our physical wiring, so to speak. And ultimately, the most effective, so it's appearing, trauma resolution techniques are involving a somatic or body-based element. TRE, EFT, where we're tapping and we're using the body to help release the trauma. And Bessel van der Kolk is a big proponent of, yoga and many other things that are saying we have to include the body to release the trauma, to make the body feel safe again, so that the body can recalibrate and be, "Oh, look, this scary thing is happening. Boy, in the past, that would have really caused me to be really nervous, but I'm not. That's interesting."
And there are gentle ways to do. There are gentler ways to do it than my way with the singing. So,
well, like
this. So, what should you do if you tap on your own and all these emotions come up?
There's a lot. That's a big question. What do I most want to say? Okay, so here's in America we have. I don't know if you have there. When if there's not a roundabout and there's a stoplight, we have green, yellow, and red lights.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Yeah. So we often use. So one of the things that when people go through an EFT training program, which is just so fabulous, because most people out there don't realize that it's the emotional freedom techniques, plural. So most people, if they've watched something on YouTube or if they've seen a demonstration or a presentation, they've heard about or seen what we call basic EFT, which is primarily what we're talking about. It's a very beautiful, powerful, simplified version of EFT, but there are many more advanced and other techniques for working with trauma and intense emotions and other things. And we're not going to go into all of those right now. So we're going to focus on basic EFT because it's easy for somebody to start to use it as a self-regulation, self-soothing technique. So when we're talking about basic EFT, back to green, yellow, and red light. When there's something we talk about called the personal peace procedure. Yeah, and it's a process that the founder of EFT, Gary Craig, developed. And he said, if you really want lasting peace, then you're going to do something like this, the personal peace procedure, where you begin, and this isn't for everybody out there just beginning to learn EFT, but when you really take it on seriously, to really clean out the past experiences of your life, to have real freedom, and it's a commitment to do it. You may be tapping every day for a year to do that. So let's look at that. But the guide that I say with that is to look at those experiences that you've had that you wish you could have skipped. And we use a green light, yellow light, red light analogy that says there are some things that I can tap on freely myself. Oh my goodness, this morning, you know what? The computer internet went down just when I needed to, and I'm still so mad at that internet company because they told me that they were going to handle this and they didn't, and I'm just really upset about that, and it's causing me all this stress. Something I can tap on myself. Then there are things that, and you know what? Then I did that. And then there's the event, and there's, I'm thinking about something that is so highly emotional that I'm thinking if I start tapping on it, I'm just going to start bawling and crying about it. And it's really intense. So maybe it's not best for me to do it myself. Maybe it's best to work with a swap partner or somebody else. And then there are those, what we call big T traumas, the sexual traumas, the bad accidents, the somebody died in front of me, the bad things, the really bad ones. And that you should always work with a certified, well-trained practitioner to help keep you safe. So when you say that, what should you tap on yourself? I always say there are considerations. There are many things you can tap on yourself, but keeping in mind that there are some things that I don't recommend that you should do yourself. So that's one framework for talking on what do I do.
Like you said, you don't know when you start tapping what is going to turn up. So you think that this is just a small issue and you start tapping and it turns out to be a much bigger issue and it's really overwhelming you. Would you suggest to stop tapping or to carry on tapping or to phone somebody straight away? Or
okay, good. Yeah, great question. So one thing I also want to let people know is, there are those certain words that we say, like even though I'm feeling really angry because the internet went out just when I needed, I'm feeling really angry, I still accept that's how I feel. I still accept myself, right? Really angry, etc. So we're working on that to bring the level of intensity down, okay? And that's what we're talking about, multiple rounds. But sometimes, as you said, we tap into something bigger and more intense. The words that we're saying help us to tune into our feelings when we're saying them. But if all of a sudden I'm feeling really sad, really mad, literally my face is turning red, am I tuned into my feelings? You bet I am. I'm already tuned in. So I can just start tapping silently. Right. So I can just tap silently because I'm already tuned into the feelings that I'm feeling. So I always want to look at how do I use tapping to regulate. If the tapping is causing it to escalate or go up, then yes. Or I realize, wow, this is something way bigger than I feel comfortable handling, then yes. One of the things that we talked about is I need to then find a way to contain, whether it's just by tapping, which is my number one way, or two, somehow finding some way to resource myself. Whether I imagine putting that problem in a container, in a safe, on the top of a mountain, and I just imagine being able to put it aside safely until I speak with somebody, whether I have another breathing tool that I use, whether I have a body-based way of finding myself and finding a calm center place and then putting it aside. Yeah, because that happens, doesn't it?
Okay, yeah, that's good. So do something to bring yourself back to your body.
Sure.
Definitely. And now, sleep. You mentioned it. Stress and sleep.
Okay. Yeah, sleep's a big issue here in the United States. There's been a lot of reports, especially for women, and especially in the middle age right now. It's showing out to be a significant health problem. People think, oh, I don't get enough sleep, but it has implications far beyond that with regard to chronic pain, with regard to many other health-related problems when our body doesn't have a chance to rejuvenate. And of course, sleep problems is not only a gender-based problem. I'm just saying there's been a lot in the news here about that lately. And so there's a lot to say about sleep. For me, the ability to gently and safely go into a calm place so that I can sleep, to be able to quiet my mind, to be able to put aside the worries or challenges or stresses of the day. We also find different during periods of our life, we have different ability to be able to do that, especially with what's going on in our life. So for me, sleep is the symptom, or lack of sleep, challenge is the symptom of something else that's causing us to be stressed, worried, anxious, etc. So, and people say, yes, but it's a chemical thing, or it's a serotonin thing. Well, sure, because I agree. But we have to look underneath that. What is causing the altered brain chemistry? What is causing the sympathetic nervous system overdrive wiring activation? So yes, there absolutely are things we can find in the body biochemically, physiologically, etc. But we have to start to look at the questions of what's going on before I go to sleep. What else is going in my life that's calling my attention, that's feeling more important for my survival? Is what was going on in my life when this problem started? So these are kind of the deep dive of questions with EFT that we start to look at that say, why is something bigger manifesting as not feeling safe enough and able enough for me to just go into a state of surrender, relaxation, and sleep?
And I think it could also have to do with what is more important, that I have to do it instead of creating space for sleep, because on the surface it sounds so simple. Just get the hours required. Stop looking at Facebook, stop running around doing things, just get the time for yourself. And there are also sort of thoughts, or I don't know how to explain it in English. Förutfattade meningar.
No, you don't have to. It's okay. You know.
No, it's true, yeah. And tapping comes in there to actually address those things.
Yeah, so I mean, there are different approaches, certainly. So one of them could be a regular tapping routine, either in bed or shortly before I get in bed, and starting to just develop a tapping habit of, okay, so what, for example, what am I thinking about sleep tonight? Oh, I'm worried that I'm going to fall asleep and then I'm going to wake up and I'm not going to be able to get back to sleep. And so I'm scared that's going to happen, or I'm worried that's, okay, even though I'm scared that tonight I'm going to fall right asleep because I've been falling right, but then I'm going to wake up at 4 a.m. and then I won't be able to get back to sleep. Okay. So we can do a bit of what I call first aid tapping, or kind of what I'm feeling in the moment. Right. So that's one thing to do. One thing is when you wake up, and actually more first aid would be actually I wake up in the middle of the night and I'm wide awake and I can't go back to sleep. Okay. Now, a few considerations with that. If there's somebody else next to you, then doing this in bed can be quite disruptive for the person next to you, right? And now you've woken them up, and now the both of you are awake, and that doesn't help because now you start talking, and, right? So you could do it very gently. So remember that the tapping points can be stimulated also by simply touching and breathing the points, by rubbing the points. You can be saying things silently in your head. You don't have to be saying it out loud. And another technique, when you've done enough tapping, then energetically, it's like I've done tapping so much, if I close my eyes right now, I can imagine exactly what it feels like tapping on the top of my head. And I can imagine exactly what it feels like on my eyebrow, and the side of my eye, and under my. So energetic or visioning, imagining, whatever word you wish to use, of energetically stimulating through attention, because where attention goes, energy flows. So that's another way. So just tapping on what I'm feeling in that moment. Oh my God, I'm just scared. I'm going to stay awake. And whatever we're tapping on, we can do that right in the moment. And ultimately, if it's please go ahead.
Now, I was going as a little add-on to that. I find it very useful also to add like a little mantra. You sort of imagine the points, like you say, and then say, like, I can hear in my mind's ear, sleep now, or I'm safe, like adding some kind of reassuring little mantra. I mean, not until it depends on what you're worried about.
There's tremendous creativity.
To do it. Yeah, it's good stuff.
Yeah, and then the next layer. So again, so let's just kind of start with, okay, I'm awake and I'm using the tapping to just tap on what I'm feeling, or as you just shared. Tapping as a habit before, when the triggers happen, like, okay, it's an hour before bedtime and I'm already thinking, oh God, I have to get to sleep tonight. I have to get this. So tapping before bedtime. Yep. And then ultimately the next layer before that is like, what is going on in my life that changed, that's causing the stress levels so that I'm not able to have my brain waves slow down, my nervous system start to regulate. So starting to then do an exploration outside of that time to look at what has changed, what is going on, what might I not be attributing the sleep to that might be, and this is kind of that detective work that we start to look at. When did this problem start? What change happened in my life that I didn't make any connection to sleep? But yeah, that's about the time when, I lost my job, when I was told, my partner told me they were leaving, whatever it was that's stressful in one's life, to start to explore that on one's own or with a practitioner. So those kinds of layers of investigation. Yeah.
It's a good outlay, you're saying, starting with the here and now, calming the body, and then just widening. And the last level you talk about, I mean, not to do that at night or just before you go to bed, but put aside some time for it to really dive into it. But there's something, when we were talking about safety, why is it so important to feel safe when you're doing this kind of work on yourself?
Well, I'd ideally say we do, but we don't always. So let me say what I mean by that. Many practitioners of many different styles have started to prescribe meditation or mindfulness or various methods of that, of stillness, etc. For many people, that is very, very, very stressful and hard.
Yeah.
And yet we think it's a good thing, so we should be able to do it. And if I can't do it, then something's wrong with me, my brain, I'm just not a meditator. Well, for many people, that sense of stillness or blankness does not feel safe. Because if all of a sudden, if I clear my thoughts and I'm doing nothing and I'm being still, what starts to bubble up are the worries, the fears, the concerns, the things that don't make me feel safe. So I keep moving. I keep moving like in the wheel, like a squirrel in a wheel, where my brain does, because stillness and emptiness does not feel a safe place, because in that stillness, who knows what's going to start coming up. So you may say, still your mind, and my brain is going, no way am I going to still my mind, because you don't know what's going to happen if I get still, what I'm going to start thinking about. So I'd like to say that tapping automatically makes me feel safe, but it doesn't necessarily. If I have a history, part of safety may be first promoted or supported by being in a safe place with another person. In other words, I think about like the idea of a life raft. If two people are in a life raft out at sea and one person falls off, they're in fear, they're in worry, they're in stress, the other person holds that life raft still and safe, so the other person can climb back on, right? It's what we call this interpersonal neurobiology. I'm looking at you and you're holding a safe, grounded, calm place so that I can come back to that, right? So that if I'm working with a practitioner that's able to hold that ground, I can meet them there and then find a sense of calm and peace back in myself again through that connection with another. But if I'm dealing with something very stressful and unsafe, and it's reminding me of other times that people told me that I wasn't good enough or not okay, etc., then me on my own is not feeling safe with myself. Ideally, we want to, and we want to move towards that. But it's where the connection with another, somebody that helps to facilitate safe space, becomes really critical. And that's kind of that dance between when we're talking about when do we do things on our own and with another. Well, especially when feelings of unsafety come in. And a lot of times people might not call it unsafe. They might think of it as variations of words of vulnerability or scared. Or so I want to be careful. Sometimes people don't say I don't feel safe because they're thinking safe has to do with physical harm, like somebody's going to hit me or something. But how many times do people, and I used to, I'll speak for myself. I remember, so this has been a theme of my life, of course. The beauty of the horrendousness of trauma is painful and causes suffering, and who wants to have that? And yet on the flip side of trauma, sometimes are our greatest gifts. And out of that come our callings for life. So, love my parents, love my dad, but I was the first child and he wasn't so good at it the first time. And had his own ways of not managing his anger and temper, et cetera. And of course, it had an impact on me. And there were times that were not good with that. And so in that early ages, when our neurology and our brain and our body is being wired, I was constantly, and I didn't even realize it till I started to get into this work, that I would drive and I'd constantly be scanning. I'd constantly be watching my environment, not realizing, just thinking I was looking around. Or if somebody would suddenly walk in the room and say something, I would jump. And it would not only, it was surprising, but literally my body would leap. Okay. So it was as if, like a car alarm can be set to a sensitivity where somebody has to try to get in for the car alarm to cut off. It shouldn't be. If I just brush the car lightly, the car alarm goes off. So it's wired too sensitively, right? So trauma can set that wiring so it's so sensitive that even small things or words or looks from somebody else can set me off into being defensive or responding in an exaggerated way. Yeah.
It's painful to live like that. It takes so much energy that could be used in different ways.
Yes, but often we just think, well, that's just the way it is. That's the way I am. There's not an option. There's not a one. That's just who I am. Yeah. And that's where, one of my favorite medical doctors, Dr. Gabor Mate from Vancouver, he's written many beautiful books on addiction and trauma, et cetera. And When the Body Says No, and The Realm of Hungry Ghosts. And one of the things that he says is trauma affects every aspect of our life, even to the point of the clothes that we put on ourselves in the morning and wear. And you think, wait a minute, that's a little ridiculous, isn't it? Like trauma, really, it's like, okay, you're just too into your own trauma world. Except if you think about it, do I wear things that are colorful, that make me stand out, and am I comfortable with that? Or do I wear earth tones that don't stand out? Do I wear clothes that's tight-fitting, that draw attention, or do I wear things that push the attention away? And you start to think about where I live, how I act, what I wear, is all based on the wiring of how I feel about myself, about how safe I am interacting with others and having others see me, being able to feel comfortable, feeling vulnerable and open and authentic and seen. So trauma affects all of these things.
It really does. So going back, not going back, but going forward perhaps, if you think of EFT practitioners, how can we help our clients to feel safe or not vulnerable in that healing? Have you got any good ideas to share?
Yeah, we got to do our personal work. But what that means is, right, it's kind of like we could say, great, I'll just put on more layers of clothes and that'll make me feel better in the moment, which is okay. I mean, what we call resources.
Yeah.
We want to, number one, what do I want to say? Okay, so this is what I want to say. I used to feel personally that that feeling safe made me what? That it wasn't okay to feel unsafe. That wanting safety somehow made me weaker.
Oh.
Like, buck up, right? Like, come on, move on. Let's do. And then there was a point in my life that I realized, no, feeling safe is critical. And it's okay to need and want to feel safe in my relationships, in my work, in the places I choose to be, etc. So first step, I think, is acknowledging and being okay with understanding from the people who are at the top of their field that healing doesn't happen without safety. So first, I think just acknowledging and being okay with that, I think is the first step.
Okay.
Many people don't even understand that. And recognize. So talking about the importance of safety, which is what we're doing today, I think is a big step. Second is we may have had many experiences that make us feel unsafe, and then we make decisions that, the world really is unsafe. I have lots of evidence and experiences that I can point to that says the world is not a safe place. And that has been their experience with the world because it's based on earlier experiences which made things not feel safe. So ultimately, safety, a sense of safety, is going to be supported by others around us, but ultimately is our own personal journey and work for unraveling the experiences and decisions that came out of those earlier experiences that made us feel unsafe. So it's our own personal journey, whether it's part with ourselves and part with others and part with a tapping practitioner, et cetera, to help to start to unravel those things that were resetting the nervous system. So it has to have a reset. And for us to have a reset, we have to go back and find what caused it to be set in a too sensitive setting. Right? You could have the alarm in the car going off, and you could feel better in the moment by doing this. So in the moment, the car alarm isn't so hard on my ears. But ultimately, if I want to be able to turn the setting down, I have to go back and find out when it was set too high.
So to sum it up, as a practitioner, I would first do my own work to be able to meet my client and feel safe.
It's the most important element of a practitioner. Yeah. A practitioner that has not done their own work should not be working with others. I feel very, very strongly about that. And it's not that it's not always ongoing, right? So let's just say it's never done.
No.
But you know what I mean.
And life happens. I mean, it brings up new things in us.
The concern is, and so when you watch things like this online, so you who right now who are watching this, I don't know you. I don't know your past. I don't know your traumatic past. I don't know your experiences. So I can't create tapping for you, which ideally is always based on your unique point of view, your unique experiences. So I can't do that for everybody watching, obviously. I don't have that skill yet. So the challenge then becomes is we can't work with matrix reimprinting with a past event or something bad or something stressful for you, because I don't know what it is for you and I don't know the connections you have. But one of the things that we can do is when I've worked with somebody that's trying to resolve an issue, whether it's insomnia or something else, or chronic stress state that's resulting in a physical problem, etc., is once we've done a lot of the clearing of the past, then we can start to move to the possibility of imagining a different future, imagining when it's not here. Okay. So we can use matrix reimprinting in what we call future matrix reimprinting to imagine a me in which this problem has improved or resolved, in order to get information or feedback from that part of ourselves that overcame the problem. And we can go to that future self that has overcome it to get some feedback, and we'll move over the process. But basically that's what I felt most comfortable doing in this format. Yeah.
That's brilliant. Okay.
Okay. All right. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be doing points on the hand. Okay. There are two different primary ways to stimulate these points. One of them will be squeezing the fingertips, and another one will be tapping. And you can do whichever one works for you. And one of the things that I'll say is we're going to be tapping on finger points, and because the vibration goes through the finger points, I'm going to make it easily accessible, and I'm not going to get detailed into the minutia of exactly where the point is. So it's going to look like this for ease. I'm going to put my hand up here to see, but then when I'm tapping, I'll probably have it lower, because you want your arms relaxed, right? But just so you can see. So I want you to go ahead and take your tapping hand, your dominant hand, right? I'm right-handed. And I'm going to, on my thumbnail of my left thumb, I'm going to tap on that. I'm going to tap on the tip of my second finger, very lightly, and third finger, and fourth finger, and fifth finger. And then we're going to make a big circle to the side of the hand, the front of the wrist, and then back to the thumb. So we're just making a circle. Does it matter if you go clockwise or counterclockwise? It doesn't, whatever is comfortable for you. Because ultimately when we're doing this, we're keeping it very rhythmic and very regular and very gentle, feather-like touching. Yeah. And I want to, let's keep doing it now for a minute just to get used to it, to the point that you don't have to think about it anymore. Because the last thing I want is your attention on, right? So, all right, so I'm just going to go ahead and invite everybody. We're going to explore sleep as the focus of the issue. But if for some reason you're wanting to work on something else other than sleep, then you can. Okay. So as you're starting to go round and round, and you're not having to think about it anymore, and I'm just going to invite you and everybody watching and listening to go ahead and soften your gaze and or close your eyes, whatever feels comfortable or safe for you. And just breathing, whatever way makes you feel comfortable and relaxed. Good. And as you're tapping, and you don't even have to start thinking about tapping, and you just start to forget about it, I want you to go ahead and just, however you imagine or know or see things. Some people are more visual, some are more auditory, some just know. And it doesn't really matter how you know things, you just do. And I just want you to go ahead and just tune into the problem that you're wanting to work on right now. I'm going to use from my word problems with sleep, but you can tune into what your problem is. And you're just tuning into, the frustration of not being able to, of waking up at 3 in the morning or whatever it is. And now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to ask you to imagine some sort of tunnel, or however you imagine a way that you are going to go into warp speed and you are going to move forward in time. Doesn't really matter how. You just find a way. And I'm just going to invite you to go forward in time until you find a you that has resolved this problem and is no longer suffering from it. And you may find them in a particular location. They might be floating in space. They might just be waking up in the morning refreshed. Whatever it is and however you imagine and tune into a future you that no longer suffers from this, that has moved on. It's not a problem anymore. And I want you to just notice. The invitation is just to notice them and notice notice how they are. When you look at them, what is their emotional state? What are they doing? How do they seem? Just notice what you notice about them that seems different than you, because they aren't dealing with this problem anymore. It's resolved. And then I'm going to go ahead and invite you to connect with them. Probably don't have to introduce yourself. They probably know who you are, but however you wish to, and however it feels safe and comfortable for you, connect with that future you. All tapping on the fingers. Connect with them, and I'm going to invite you to ask them a question. Ask them what it is that from their perspective, because you're suffering with this problem and they know you are, but ask them for one thing, one piece of advice, one piece of information that if you knew or you understood or you accepted, or one thing for you to change that would make the biggest difference to be able to get from where you are now to where they are, what would that be? They might show you something, they might tell you something, you might just intuit something, feel something. And if you don't, that's okay. But just go ahead and allow it some time and spaciousness. And when you've received that piece of information, that insight, it might be something that they're pointing you that you need to resolve, something you need to change, something you need to let go of, something you need to do, something you just need to know about yourself. Thank them. Thank that future you for that insight, for that piece of information. And then I'm going to invite you to, in a sense, step into them. See what it feels like to be that future you. Notice what it feels like emotionally to be over this problem. Notice what it feels like in your body, or energetically, or what it looks like. And see if you can allow yourself to experience and feel what it feels like to have overcome this issue, this problem. What it's like to be sleeping through the night. How life will be different when that happens. Notice whatever colors you notice, or feelings, or sounds, or thoughts come up as you merge and you feel in this moment what it feels like to be over your issue, the problem. Once you start generating those kinds of good feelings, those healing feelings, those resolved feelings, One rule with matrix reimprinting is that we only move to the next step once this feels better and once this feels good. So if it doesn't, please don't go to the next step. What I'd like you to do now is go ahead and put both of your hands over your heart center. And I want you to go ahead and take that image, a snapshot of those feelings and images and colors and sounds and all that sensory information, and turn it up even another notch, brighter, stronger. And take that image, take that picture, and bring it in through the very top of your head, rewiring all the neural pathways with this new information, with this new image, with these new feelings. Rewiring all those brain cells and synapses with this new truth, with this new knowing, with these new feelings. And then let that information and that picture drift down from your brain, down through the entirety of your body, down through your torso, down to your fingertips, down through your legs to your toes, sending this information to all the cells of your body. And then allow it to come back up into your heart center. And let it grow and expand, bigger, brighter, stronger. And then when it feels bright enough and strong enough and it feels ripe and ready, I'm going to invite you to take a breath in. And then you're going to exhale it from your heart out through your body in all directions with an exhale. And when that feels complete, slowly and gently open your eyes, coming back into the present moment. Yeah?
It feels like I'm sort of doubly here, much more here than when we started.
Very good.
Thank you.
Yeah. I also just want to say, because there'll be a percentage of people that was hard for.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I want to say is that's okay too. And it's why I said often I don't begin that process until people have started to resolve, because there's going to be this voice that says, I can't even imagine that. I can't even. So I just want you to know if that's what's happening for you and you struggled with that, that's okay. And it's actually very, very common. And it's why I needed to show an experience, but I also wanted to allow that if it didn't go smoothly for you, it's only because there's more work to do here to be able to clear out, to open up to the possibility that that could even be resolved. So for those of you that are feeling that way, I just want to say that that's totally fine, that happened for you, and it's happened for me until I wasn't ready to be able to see the possibility of resolution and it happening differently. So it's okay. It's all a healing journey.
And I'm really glad you're saying that, Craig, because it's like the name of this program series, Stress, Sleep and Self-Compassion. So it's like a way of showing yourself self-compassion to accept that, well, this is what happens to me right now. And there's always something I can do to give yourself safety and love.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks an awful lot.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. And I, for everybody, I'm so excited and so thrilled that you're doing this for your country and for, whoever else in Europe and Scandinavia and around the world get to watch this. It's, I know it's not a small thing to take this on, having done things like this, and in any way that I can support you.
But it's nice. I get to connect with so many nice people. So I mean, I'm really coming out of this much. Yes, and it's like you say, like I think as well. More people who tap, the better. It's better for all of us. The better world. So before we get too carried away with the goodness of tapping, let's say goodbye to everyone who's been listening, and thank you so much, Craig.
Thank you.